This is a coming-of-age story called Showdown. I wrote it while I was at Iowa State in 94, 95, somewhere around there. And it was for a nonfiction class, and it was a lesson in, it is a true story, although it didn't totally happen the way it is here. It's one of the things you have to sometimes do with nothing. Showdown. Things were serious. The Scarlet Horseman had been shot dead in chapter 9, and there were still 6 chapters to go. How was he going to get out of this? 15-chapter movie serials were big in the North Philadelphia community where I grew up. There are no movie houses there today. The area around 17th and Oxford, barren now of vital businesses, carries the label of deprived urban revitalization zone, or some euphemism. In the decade following World War II, the city fathers were more frank and referred to it as a slum. To me, it was home. 3 vibrant movie theaters were within walking distance. It took 31 cents to go to my favorite, the Liberty Theater. 16 cents to get in, a dime for popcorn, and a nickel for a soda. My buddies and I sometimes went to the Pearl, but very seldom to the Vogue, which was actually the closest. The Pearl was on Ridge Avenue, about 4 blocks west, the same distance as the Liberty on Columbia Avenue was to the east. Legend had it that the Pearl was named after Pearl Bailey. She had actually sung there several times in the 1940s when they had stage shows, but some said the names were a coincidence. I stayed away from the Vogue after a discarded candy bar created an unwanted pattern on my white linen shorts when I was about 8 or 9. My buddy Jerome and I trekked to the Lib on Saturdays and entered the world of serials like the Scarlet Horseman. We preferred the Lib, although it meant dealing with 2 local hoods named Skinny and Bayboy. Although they both lived at 19th and Oxford, closer to both the Pearl and the Vogue, they did most of their extorting at the Lib. They acted like they were collecting a tax. If you gave something up, say your soda or popcorn money, or your soda and popcorn money if they were feeling especially mean, they would move on to their next victims waiting to go inside the theater. Skinny was about 3 years older than us. Jerome and I were 12, and the leader of the 19th and Oxford gang. Bayboy, his nickname was a contraction of Baby Boy, was about our age, but he had a rep for being relentless in a fistfight. A line of 9 to 12-year-old boys and girls started forming outside the Lib around noon. Skinny and his apprentice would start at the front and work toward the other end. "Give me a dime," Skinny would say, his face about 2 inches from yours. "Oh, Skinny, man, I've only got a nickel more than I need to get in," was a typical pleading reply. He might settle for it, or he might put his hands in your pocket. You gave something up, or you fought, which usually meant getting beat up, since Skinny was bigger and Bayboy was meaner than most of us. Skinny wasn't all that skinny. He would later make a name for himself as a welterweight contender named Sugar Hart. Bayboy's fate was to catch a rival gang member's bullet in his 14-year-old chest 2 years later outside a house party. As a result of their strong-arming, Jerome and I sometimes went without sodas and twice went without popcorn. We would sit soaking in humiliation, not really caring what happened to the Scarlet Horseman or the Durango Kid. Skinny and Bayboy always struck fear in our hearts, the way the Scarlet Horseman struck fear in the hearts of the Indians. What changed all this for me was Jerome. He never told me what changed it for him, but he was different the Saturday we went to see Chapter 10 of the Scarlet Horseman, when we had no idea how he would get out of his most recent predicament, which was about as serious as it could get. He'd been shot stone cold dead at the end of Chapter 9, and there were still 6 chapters to go. The Scarlet Horseman fought crime in the Old West in a costume that was stranger than most. His entire outfit, except for black boots, was a violent red, billowing bolero pants and shirt, a cape, hood, and mask. His outfit looked a lightish gray to us because the serials were always shot in black and white. But the lobby posters showed us the actual garish, orange-tinted red costume. Atop a sleek black stallion, he fought the bad guys with 2 black 6 guns. In his other identity, he posed as an invalid in a wheelchair. You didn't see many guys in wheelchairs in the movie Old West that we viewed at the lift. We loved his gimmick, an odd-sounding whistle that he blew to announce his arrival, usually at the Indian reservation. Its ascending note sounded like a harmonica crossed with a trumpet. He'd raise one hand real cool-like and always get things straightened out. The Indians respected the Scarlet Horseman big time, except in Chapter 9. After blowing his trademark riff and raising a scarlet-globed hand, blam! Just like that, one of the Indians blew him away with a bullet to the heart. How in the world would he get out of this? Jerome and I started to the lib early the following Saturday to see Chapter 10. We wanted to be near the front of the line, even though they never started until we were all inside. We were both skinny and didn't look tough at all. Jerome's easy handsomeness already had girls fluttering around him. My open and innocent face didn't look any tougher than his. As we walked north on 17, Jerome was unusually quiet. We turned onto Columbia, past Pat's drugstore, where they made world-class chocolate fountain sodas, whose secret ingredient was a shot of milk. I'm not giving up any of my money, Jerome said quietly as we passed my future employer, McLaren's men's store. If they want it, they'll have to take it. I looked at him. He was stone serious. Me either, I heard myself reply. I had to say it. I hadn't been thinking about saying it. I had been trying not to think about Skinny and Bayboy because when I did, it always made my stomach hurt a little. But I couldn't let him say it by himself. I couldn't let him do it by himself. We usually chatted about anything and everything during the 4-block walk to the lift. But this day, we strode silently, Herb and Holiday, headed for the OK Corral. We arrived shortly before noon with the sun beating down directly from overhead. 3 boys we didn't know were already in line. We took places behind them. Jerome and I made small talk for the next 30 minutes. We were discussing the wondrous size of his neighbor Dolores's breasts when we spotted Skinny, Bayboy, and a 3rd kid we didn't know coming diagonally across Columbia. They headed directly toward us. My hands balled into fists, seemingly on their own. Each of the 19 streeters got a dime from the 3 boys standing in front of us. My adrenaline flow shifted into high. A chilly calm descended weirdly from somewhere. This had never happened, and I didn't recognize myself. Skinny looked at Jerome, then at me. We looked back. No one spoke, but everything was said. He moved past us, past the 2 girls behind us, to the 2 boys behind them. His partners eyeballed us, then followed their leader. Give me a dime. Oh, Skinny, man. After getting our popcorn and soda, which tasted way better than usually, we settled in for the pressing issue of the Scarlet Horseman's fate. They recapped the end of Chapter 9, and once again our red-garbed hero was blasted off his horse. We held our breath. What? The Scarlet Horseman rode onto the scene as bad as you please, evoking alarmed looks from the Indians. Unmasking the dead man on the ground, they discovered that he was some bad guy. The real Scarlet Horseman trained a 6-gun on the Indian who had shot the imposter. All right! We never went without popcorn or soda again.